Chapter 39 of The Egoist. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Magdalena Cook. The Egoist by George Meredith. In the heart of the Egoist. But already he had begun to regard the deed as his executioner. He dreaded meeting Clara. The folly of having retained her stood before him. How now to look on her and keep a sane resolution unwavering? She tempted to the insane. Had she been away, he could have walked through the performance composed by the sense of doing a duty to himself. Perhaps faintly hating the poor wretch he made happy at last. Kind to her in a manner, polite. Clara's presence in the house previous to the deed, and, oh heaven, after it, threatened his wits. Pride? He had none. He cast it down for her to trample it. He caught it back ere it was trodden on. Yes, he had pride. He had it as a dagger in his breast. His pride was his misery. But he was too proud to submit to misery. What I do is right. He said the words, and rectitude smoothed his path, till the question clamoured for answer. Would the world countenance and endorse his pride in Laetitia? At one time, yes. And now? Clara's beauty ascended, laid a beam on him. We are on board the labouring vessel of humanity in a storm, when cries and counter-cries ring out. Disorderliness mixes the crew, and the fury of self-preservation divides. This one is for the ship, that one for his life. Clara was the former to him, Laetitia the latter. But what if there might not be greater safety in holding tenaciously to Clara than in casting her off for Laetitia? No, she had done things to set his pride throbbing in the quick. She had gone bleeding about first to one, then to another. She had betrayed him to Vernon and to Mrs. Mountstuart. A look in the eyes of Horace de Craye said to him as well, to whom not? He might hold to her for vengeance, but that appetite was short-lived in him if it ministered nothing to his purposes. I discard all idea of vengeance, he said, and thrilled burningly to a smart in his admiration of the man who could be so magnanimous under mortal injury. For the more admirable he, the more pitiable. He drank a drop or two of self-pity like a poison, repelling the assaults of public pity. Clara must be given up. It must be seen by the world that, as he felt, the thing he did was right. Laocoon of his own serpents, he struggled to a certain magnificence of attitude in the muscular net of constrictions he flung around himself. Clara must be given up. Oh, bright abominable! She must be given up, but not to one whose touch of her would be darts in the blood of the yielder, snakes in his bed. She must be given up to an extinguisher, to be the second wife of an old-fashioned semi-recluse, disgraced in his first. And were it publicly known that she had been cast off and had fallen on old Vernon for a refuge, and, part in spite, part in shame, part in desperation, part in a fit of good sense under the circumstances, espoused him, her beauty would not influence the world in its judgment. The world would know what to think. As the instinct of self-preservation whispered to Willoughby, the world, were it requisite, might be taught to think what it assuredly would not think if she should be seen tripping to the altar with Horace de Craye. Self-preservation, not vengeance, breathed that whisper. He glanced at her iniquity for a justification of it, without any desire to do her a permanent hurt. He was highly civilized, but with a strong intention to give her all the benefit of a scandal, supposing a scandal or ordinary tattle. And so he handed her to his cousin and secretary, Vernon Whitford, who opened his mouth and shut his eyes. You hear the world. How are we to stop it from chattering? Enough that he had no desire to harm her. Some gentle anticipations of her being tarnished were imperative. They came spontaneously to him. Otherwise the radiance of that bright abominable in loss would have been insufferable. He could not have borne it. He could never have surrendered her. Moreover, a happy present effect was the result. He conjured up the anticipated chatter and shrug off the world so vividly that her beauty grew hectic with a stain, bereft of its formidable magnetism. He could meet her calmly. He had steeled himself. Purity in women was his principal stipulation, and a woman puffed at was not the person to cause him tremors. Consider him indulgently. The egoist is the son of himself. He is likewise the father, and the son loves the father the son. They reciprocate affection through the closest of ties, and shall they view behaviour unkindly wounding either of them, not for each other's dear sake abhorring the criminal? They would not injure you, but they cannot consent to see one another suffer or crave in vain. The two rub together in sympathy besides relationship to an intenser one. Are you, without much offending, sacrificed by them? It is on the altar of their mutual love, to filial piety or paternal tenderness. The younger has offered a dainty morsel to the elder, or the elder to the younger. Absorbed in their great example of devotion, do they not think of you? They are beautiful. Yet is it most true that the younger has the passions of youth? Whereof will come division between them, and this is a tragic state. They are then pathetic. This was the state of Sir Willoughby lending ear to his elder, until he submitted to bite at the fruit proposed to him. With how wry a mouth the venerable senior chose not to mark, at least, as we perceive, a half of him was ripe of wisdom in his own interests. The cruder half had but to be obedient to the leadership of the sagacity for his interest to be secured, and a filial disposition assisted him, painfully indeed, but the same rare quality directed the good gentleman to swallow his pain. That the son should bewail his fate were a dishonour to the sire. He reverenced and submitted. Thus to say, consider him indulgently, is too much an appeal for charity on behalf of one requiring but initial anatomy, a slicing in halves. To exonerate, perchance exalt him. The egoist is a fountainhead, primeval man. The primitive is born again, the elemental reconstituted. Born again into new conditions, the primitive may be highly polished of men, and forfeit nothing save the roughness of his original nature. He is not only his own father, he is ours, and he is also our son. We have produced him, he us. Such were we, to such are we returning. Not other, sings the poet, than one who toilfully works his shallop against the tide. Si brachia forti remisit. Let him happily relax the labour of his arms, however high up the stream, and back he goes. Impetus, to the early principle of our being, with seeds and plants, that are as carelessly weighed in the hand, and as indiscriminately husbanded as our humanity. Poets, on the other side, may be cited for an assurance that the primitive is not the degenerate. Rather is he a sign of the indestructibility of the race, of the ancient energy in removing obstacles to individual growth, a sample of what we would be, had we his concentrated power. He is the original innocent, the pure simple. It is we who have fallen. We have melted into society, diluted our essence, dissolved. He stands in the midst monumentally, a landmark of the tough and honest old ages, with the symbolic alphabet of striking arms and running legs, our early language, scrawled over his person, and the glorious first flint and arrowhead for his crest. At once the spectre of the kitchen midden, and our ripest issue. But society is about him. The occasional spectacle of the primitive dangling on a rope has impressed his mind with the strength of his natural enemy, from which uncongenial sight he has turned shuddering, hardly less to behold the blast that is blown upon a reputation where one has been disrespectful of the many. By these means, through meditation on the contrast of circumstances in life, a pulse of imagination has begun to stir, and he has entered the upper sphere or circle of spiritual egoism. He has become the civilized egoist, primitive still, as sure as man has teeth, but developed in his manner of using them. Degenerate or not, and there is no just reason to suppose it, Sir Willoughby was a social egoist. fiercely imaginative in whatsoever concerned him. He had discovered a greater realm than that of the sensual appetites, and he rushes across and around it in his conquering period with an Alexander's pride. On these wind-like journeys he had carried Constantia, subsequently Clara, and however it may have been in the case of Miss Durham, in that of Miss Middleton it is almost certain she caught a glimpse of his interior, from sheer fatigue in hearing him discourse of it. What he revealed was not the cause of her sickness. Women can bear revelations, they are exciting, but the monotonousness. He slew imagination. There is no direr disaster in love than the death of imagination. He dragged her through the labyrinths of his penetralia, in his hungry coveting to be loved more and still more still, until imagination gave up the ghost, and he talked to her plain hearing like a monster. It must have been that, for the spell of the primitive upon women is masterful up to the time of contact. And so he handed her to his cousin and secretary, Vernon Whitford, who opened his mouth and shut his eyes. The urgent question was, how it was to be accomplished. Willoughby worked at the subject with all his power of concentration, a power that had often led him to feel and say that as a barrister, a diplomatist, or a general, he would have won his grades, and granting him a personal interest in the business, he might have achieved eminence. He schemed and fenced remarkably well. He projected a scene, following expressions of anxiety on account of old Vernon and his future settlement, and then Clara maintaining her doggedness, to which he was now so accustomed that he could not conceive a change in it. Says he, "If you determine on breaking, I give you back your word on one condition." Whereupon she starts. He insists on her promise. She declines. Affairs resume their former footing. She frets, she begs for the disclosure. He flatters her by telling her his desire to keep her in the family. She is unilluminated, but strongly moved by curiosity. He philosophizes on marriage. What are we? Poor creatures! We must get through life as we can, doing as much good as we can to those we love. And think as you please, I love old Vernon. Am I not giving you the greatest possible proof of it? She will not see. Then flatly out comes the one condition, that and no other. Take Vernon, and I release you. She refuses. Now ensues the debate, all the oratory being with him. Is it because of his unfortunate first marriage? You assured me you thought no worse of him, etc. She declares the proposal revolting. He can distinguish nothing that should offend her in a proposal to make his cousin happy if she will not him. Irony and sarcasm relieve his emotions, but he convinces her he is dealing plainly and intends generosity. She is confused. She speaks in maiden fashion. He touches again on Vernon's early escapade. She does not enjoy it. The scene closes with his bidding her reflect on it, and remember the one condition of her release. Mrs. Mountstuart Jenkinson, now reduced to believe that he burns to be free, is then called in for an interview with Clara. His aunt Eleanor and Isabel besiege her. Laetitia in passionate earnest besiege her. Her father is wrought on to besiege her. Finally Vernon is attacked by Willoughby and Mrs. Mountstuart, and here, Willoughby chose to think, was the main difficulty. But the girl has money. She is agreeable. Vernon likes her. She is fond of his Alps. They have tastes in common. He likes her father. And in the end he besieges her. Will she yield? De Craye is absent. There is no other way of shunning a marriage she is incomprehensibly but frantically averse to. She is in the toils. Her father will stay at Patterne Hall as long as his host desires it. She hesitates. She is overcome, in spite of a certain nausea due to Vernon's preceding alliance. She yields. Willoughby revolved the entire drama in Clara's presence. It helped him to look on her coolly. Conducting her to the dinner table, he spoke of Crossjay, not unkindly, and at the table he revolved the set of scenes with a heated animation that took fire from the wine and the face of his friend Horace, while he encouraged Horace to be flowingly Irish. He nipped the fellow good-humouredly once or twice, having never felt so friendly to him since the day of his arrival, but the position of critic is instinctively taken by men who do not flow, and Patterne Port kept Dr. Middleton in a benevolent reserve when Willoughby decided that something said by De Craye was not new, and laughingly accused him of failing to consult his anecdotal notebook for the double cross to his last sprightly sally. "Your sallies are excellent, Horace, but spare us your aunt's sallies." De Craye had no repartee, nor did Dr. Middleton challenge a pun. "We have only to sharpen our wits to trip your seductive rattler whenever we may choose to think proper, and, evidently, if we condescended to it, we could do better than he." The critic who has hatched a witticism is impelled to this opinion. Judging of the smiles of the ladies, they thought so too. Shortly before 11 o'clock, Dr. Middleton made a Spartan stand against the offer of another bottle of port. The regulation couple of bottles had been consumed in equal partnership, and the Reverend Doctor and his host were free to pay a ceremonial visit to the drawing-room, where they were not expected. A piece of work of the elder lady's, a silken boudoir sofa rug, was being examined, with high approval of the two younger. Vernon and Colonel De Craye had gone out in search of Crossjay, one to Mr. Dale's cottage, the other to call at the head and under gamekeepers. They were said to be strolling and smoking, for the night was fine. Willoughby left the room and came back with the key of Crossjay's door in his pocket. He foresaw that the delinquent might be of service to him. Laetitia and Clara sang together. Laetitia was flushed, Clara pale. At 11 they saluted the ladies Eleanor and Isabel. Willoughby said "good night" to each of them, contrasting as he did so the downcast look of Laetitia with Clara's frigid directness. He divined that they were off to talk over their one object of common interest, Crossjay. Saluting his aunts, he took up the rug, to celebrate their diligence and taste, and that he might make Dr. Middleton impatient for bed, he provoked him to admire it, held it out and laid it out, and caused the courteous old gentleman some confusion in hitting on fresh terms of commendation. Before midnight the room was empty. 10 minutes later Willoughby paid it a visit, and found it untenanted by the person he had engaged to be there. Vexed by his disappointment, he paced up and down, and chanced abstractly to catch the rug in his hand. For what purpose, he might well ask himself. Admiration of ladies' work in their absence was unlikely to occur to him. Nevertheless, the touch of the warm soft silk was meltingly feminine. A glance at the mantelpiece clock told him Laetitia was 20 minutes behind the hour. Her remissness might endanger all his plans, alter the whole course of his life. The colours in which he painted her were too lively to last. The madness in his head threatened to subside. Certain it was that he could not be ready a second night for the sacrifice he had been about to perform. The clock was at the half-hour after 12. He flung the silken thing on the central ottoman, extinguished the lamps, and walked out of the room, charging the absent Laetitia to bear her misfortune with a consciousness of deserving it. End of chapter 39.